It's finally over. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. But who won the trade? We got all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, football fans, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering all the biggest stories around the NFL here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big thank you to all the everydayers out there who make us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget you can subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a daily episode. And it is Tuesday here on Locked On NFL, so that means you've got Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter and Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. Your resident nerdy nerds, number nerds. Number nerds? Nerdy nerds. Nerdy number nerds. We are them. Hello.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. We're great. On today's episode of Locked On NFL, Aaron Rodgers is traded. It finally happened. We'll kind of look at it from the Packers' perspective, what their outlook is going into 2023. Same for the New York Jets. But I want to start off here, Luke, with who won this trade. And I'm going to start off by answering the question. We did. We win this trade because we no longer have to talk about it in hypotheticals anymore. It's done.
Yes, it will be processed before the draft actually kicks off. So sometime this week, there's still some contract stuff that needs to go down, but there's no question about if it will or won't go down or whatever. Right. They just have to do some paperwork. It's like the end of Armageddon. If you remember that movie when like the asteroid is exploding in the sky and they did it. And then like everybody crawls out of the bomb shelter and it's like, we can live our lives again, you know?
Yes, exactly. Collectively,
it's Frodo NFL, on Mount Doom, drenched in sweat and soot saying it's over. It's done. The Eagles come to get him.
Right. And Aaron Rodgers is the end of the Hulk walking down the street as the sad piano music plays. Just walking alone down the street.
I mean, this has been more or less a foregone conclusion for like a month now, and it was just the two sides staring at each other over compensation, which we've finally gotten to. So here's the compensation, all right? The Jets receive Aaron Rodgers, pick 15 and pick 170, a fifth rounder. Mm-hmm. The Green Bay Packers receive pick 13, pick 42, pick 207, and a conditional second rounder that can become a first rounder if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of snaps. So that's a first, a second, a sixth, and then what's probably a first next year.
Probably going to be a first, yeah.
And the 13-15 swap is actually kind of a small deal comparatively. I mean, up at the first round, that is pretty significant. That's not nothing. Mm-hmm. But it's not, don't go around saying they gave up 2 firsts or whatever. Because they do give a first back. So if you load that into like all the trade charts, and there's actually at rbsdm.com now, there is a great new tool that helps you do that. Depending on where that conditional pick lines up, but let's assume it's a first because I think it's likely enough that Aaron Rodgers is just snap count. Yeah. So he just has to basically like not get hurt and not like retire to go on Jeopardy or decide to go try to run for state senate in Wisconsin. That values Aaron Rodgers as some kind of top 10 draft pick. Essentially saying if you had pick 8 and you traded it for Aaron Rodgers, that's essentially the value. So for who won this trade, and that's not even considering the money, by the way. So for who won this trade, you have to kind of decide, do I think, like, let's say the Falcons traded pick 8 for Aaron Rodgers. Who do you think would win that trade? Probably informs who you think won this trade. That's another way to look at it.
That's a really good point. I tend to like this trade for New York, but it comes with a little bit of a caveat. I like when a team goes out and gets the guy they want to be their quarterback in particular. I'm a big fan of that. I hate seeing franchises that muddle around in the quarterback carousel for too long and everything, but aren't making active steps to go out and do it. If you're at least like, what I like here for the Jets is that they've been investing high first round selections in quarterbacks that have not panned out. So what do? They said, okay, well, we're going to go the complete opposite side of the spectrum, and we're going to go and get the guy.
Enough dice rolls on BYU dudes. Let's just get a dude we know is good.
Yeah, and let's go and get, a multi-time MVP at that, because heck, if we can get one good year out of him, which is I think what you're going to get maybe out of Aaron Rodgers, that's where the other caveat comes from, then I think you've gone out and you've done what you needed to do. So I like the team that goes out and gets its quarterback, because everything else in terms of what Green Bay gets out of this is hypothetical until every single one of those picks is made. And then those picks turn into other picks and get traded for other picks and things like that. And so I do like the move from 15 to 13. I made a joke about it on Twitter and I was just like, LOL, why even swap those spots? But the truth is that it gets the Packers closer to being able to move into the top 10 to go and get the wide receiver that they want, or whatever player it is that they want. Like, I don't think that
might
that move
fall to them at 13 too.
Yeah, and that could end up falling to them there. That wasn't going to fall to them at 15. So I do get it. And I love for all the 6th-round picks in the world to know that just you're one move away from being a 5th-round selection. But I think the thing for me is, how good is Aaron Rodgers still? Because last year he did not look great.
My hang up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you ask like Peter Bukowski at Locked On Packers, if you ask a lot of people who cover the Packers, they're going, wait, did the Jets still think he's good? Dude's washed. He's 39. He definitely fell away in a sense. And maybe that's he just wasn't his year, right? Maybe he'll come back and have a spite-filled MVP season or something like that with the Jets. Maybe he doesn't, and they win 6 games, and now they've just throw another thing on the pile of massive franchise altering Jets mishaps. What's interesting here is how Aaron Rodgers is going to get paid.
Yes, that's the next piece of the puzzle.
His contract, and we don't have to go into all of the details of it, but his contract right now there's upwards of $40 million in dead cap that the Packers just take. And there's nothing they can do about that. There's no rework. There's no nothing.
They're going to
what they actually can do. And that's not net. That's gross dead cap. I think net, it costs them about $8 million more. And they can actually make that number go up if that's what it took to get the draft compensation that they took, which, if Rodgers is redoing his deal, is actually a possibility. So the Packers might have actually taken on more money and essentially done the cap dump thing for more draft picks, kind of Osweiler type deal as part of this, kind of NBA style almost. Yeah, that could be a consideration as well. But we have yet to see the details of how Rodgers' contract works with the Jets, but you have to think about that as part of the compensation too. I say on my show all the time, there's 2 kinds of currency. There's draft picks and there's money. And if you look at, wow, this team has spent all kinds of draft capital on a position. Why do they spend so much of that position? Almost always you look and see that they've spent no money at that position. And it's just that they're just using one kind of currency and not the other. And it makes it look lopsided. So you have to consider both when you are looking for what the Jets paid here. And what it's going to look like is, wow, the Jets paid a lot. You better hope Aaron Rodgers just comes back to MVP form, and that whatever was wrong in 2022 is not something that comes with him and was something that was just like Packers specific. And boy, I certainly would love to learn that. But I have my skepticisms. I have a feeling that we look back on this time next year and we go, man, Packers really got away with one. That's my speculation here. But I think to answer the question, the titular question of the show, who won this trade? You have to predict how Aaron Rodgers will play. Yeah. And you can only be so sure about that because I don't know who knows how well his Panchakarma went this year. To make that declaration, you have to do some predicting. But that I guess is what we're gonna do for this show. We'll talk about the Jets side. We'll talk about the Packers side. But hey, this is gonna change the odds, huh? Yeah. This is gonna mess with some things. So if you have an idea of it, maybe you're a Jets fan and you're yelling at me going, you don't know they just traded for a Hall of Famer, you don't know anything. Well, put your money where your mouth is. Go to FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And if you're new to FanDuel and you sign up there, you can get a no sweat first bet, which means if you whiff on your first bet, you can get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. You can also bet on NFL draft props. You can bet on the XFL playoffs, which are going on. My Battlehawks got robbed.
Yes, they did.
you can go to, I had to find a way to complain about it.
You got it.
You can bet on MLB, you can bet on NBA or NHL playoffs, everything from player props to spreads, over-unders, money lines, even parlay a whole bunch of them together, jam them together, try to get a better payout. That is at FanDuel.com/lockedon for that no sweat first bet to get bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, make every moment more.
All right, everybody, we are continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, diving into the Aaron Rodgers trade, and you can absolutely expect that Tony and James in tomorrow's Wednesday episode of Locked On NFL will be doing the same, and also looking ahead to the NFL draft as well. So, Luke, as we look at this, let's look at this from the Jets' perspective, and I'm gonna start off here by saying this is all Tom Brady's fault, and what I mean by that is Tom Brady changes teams at 40 years old, 40 whatever years old, goes out, wins a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The New York Jets watch that happen from a pretty nice vantage point, right? Tom Brady left their division after years and years of dominance within that division, and he goes off and wins a ring, not a thing. What am I doing? And then says, you know what? I want some of that. And then so then they go out and they bring in Aaron Rodgers. And so I do think that there is something about like him being 39 years old, but we've seen it now work in the NFL. It is a copycat league. Where does all that settle in? So I agree with you that you have to predict Aaron Rodgers and what's going to happen in 2023 in order for you to be able to say that the Jets win or lose that trade. However, I do think that the outlook for the Jets is at least somewhat positive. They, no matter what, have now upgraded from Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers. No matter what version of Aaron Rodgers they upgraded, whatever version of Aaron Rodgers they get, it's still an upgrade from what they had. Let's be factual. And then the other piece here is, how do you support him around? So they already, he's rejoining. I think Alan Lazard was on the list.
Oh, right, they got like all his friends.
Like, yeah, like all the people that he said weren't good enough in Green Bay, he'll now team back up with in New Jersey, and then I guess everything's gonna be peachy keen because you also have a couple of other really good weapons over there, and Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, very very good running back, all of that. So I do think that the Jets have sort of plugged in their final puzzle piece, and I think John Butchko would say the same thing over at Locked On Jets. But I do think you and I have had this conversation before. Is the fan base excited about this, or does the fan base just kind of look at this and say, we have no idea what's happening? You know what I mean? And that can't be the judge of the trade, but when it comes to the outlook of their 2023, I'm curious about the excitement around this move.
I wonder, and look, this is Jets fans, right? They have a bit of different personality, and that's fair.
Yeah, understandably so.
Understandable. They've been through it a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, not since the last time the exact mirror of this happened in Brett Favre.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, I think you said the Jets made a move like this, and meanwhile they've toiled through Mark Sanchez's all the way through Zach Wilson's and
Christian
all these guys.
Hackenberg.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Remember
Christian
that?
Hackenberg.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. I blocked him out.
So did the Jets fans. I just
sorry,
Jets so fans. Many Jets fans. I'm so sorry.
Just one rattle off some names.
Yeah, and that one media member that he hit with a pass during his rookie training camp or whatever. I forgot about.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Goodness. But through all of that, it's never really been this kind of move.
Mm-hmm.
We can go up and down this Jets roster and say, man, they don't need a lot out of their quarterback. They just need the dude not to be a total mess. And you can hope you can rely on that for Rodgers. Now, they probably overpaid if all they needed was a guy that wasn't a mess for that. But hey, you also get the idea that maybe this dude can just pull out some of his old MVP wiles, and he is, a long-time veteran. He's smart and all that. You're not trying to talk yourself into some 3-year dude that still doesn't know how to read the full field.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's a breath of fresh air. The other thing is that's a tough division.
Very tough.
You've got Miami's up and coming. The Bills are already a superstar elite team. Even the Patriots, they're kind of falling away. But I mean, they're no gimme, right? That's a tough division to play in. And it reminds me a little bit of the conversations we had about the AFC West this time last year, where you go, man, I don't know. The Raiders could make something. The Broncos just got Russell Wilson, and we'll see if anybody can actually upend the sort of entrenched superpower of that division, which the AFC West couldn't. The Chiefs ran away with it. But I think, yeah, if you're going to be stuck in a division like this, you can either sort of turtle and take your lumps and just try to build some young core. But that's what the Jets have. They've got Sauce Gardner and
pretty
Quinn
talented
Williams
defense and a great coach.
Yeah.
Who could probably play defense if they needed him to.
Yeah, a super yoked coach.
Yes, Coach Yoke.
Coach Yoked.
I wonder too, like, just thinking about the quarterbacks in the division, right? Like, where does Aaron Rodgers rank? Like, he's clearly behind Josh Allen, right? So you've got to go like Josh Allen, and then is it Aaron Rodgers, and then Tua, and then Mac Jones / Bailey Zappi, or is it like Tua and then Aaron Rodgers and then Mac Jones / Bailey Zappi? Like, I definitely think the Patriots situation is at the bottom.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so weird. Like, I should not be asking, is Tua Tagovailoa better than Aaron Rodgers? Like, in Tua's like best day, I shouldn't be asking that question because after all, we're talking about Aaron frickin' Rodgers, right? But in 2023, it's a legitimate question. Like, which one of them and the system that's around them, their ability to be able to run it. Like, Mike McDaniel is going to be able to do a little bit of a training wheels situation like Kyle Shanahan has done in San Francisco and be able to do that for Tua. That helps Tua be good. And so, like, where does Aaron Rodgers rank? I'm so curious about where this goes.
If you're a Jets fan and you want to fantasize about, this being the Tom Brady thing where he goes to his next team and he actually wins one for you, you have to understand how Tom Brady did that because Tom Brady got old that first year in Tampa and they started off bad. If you remember, they had a really rough start to that year and he had to recalibrate what his arm could and couldn't do. And we have not seen Aaron Rodgers do that yet. And the particular thing that I remember from watching Packers games as an invested Vikings fan was the cover 2 hole shot throw, which is one of the harder throws the NFL has to offer, but many NFL quarterbacks can make that throw. Where you've got to get it outside the lurking safety, but beyond the cornerback that's kind of hanging out underneath. To throw to the corner, you needed a lot of zip on it, but also some touch. It's a really, really hard throw. And Aaron Rodgers just could not make that throw.
Right.
And honestly, I think that, and among other sort of deficiencies in arm talent compared to what he's used to, his arm just cannot cash the checks he's used to writing, is kind of what lost them that Week 18 game against Detroit, where he threw a whole bunch of interceptions to the same guy. They kind of got him with the same thing over and over again because he just could not make that throw anymore. Now, that's not a catastrophe. There are teams that are successful with quarterbacks who can't make that. They just don't have that in the playbook then. You just don't run smash against cover 2. You beat cover 2 a different way. Run into it or whatever. With Breece Hall, you can do that if you're the Jets. But you have to have that sort of acknowledgement of, okay, this is what I can't do anymore. This is where I'm not this guy anymore. And this is what I need to do. And it takes a little bit of time because it's not just deciding, all right, I will make this throw. I will make this throw. I won't make this throw. It's a feel for it. It's kind of recalibrating your instinct almost. It's really hard to do. Tom Brady took him a half a year to do it. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers has done it yet. So that's what you have to rely on. That's what you have to hope you see. If you see a more conservative, a smarter, more, judicious, maybe is the word, Aaron Rodgers come out for the Jets, I think that's a really, really good thing for the Jets.
Agreed.
But if he comes out and he's still trying to sling it everywhere and he's still trying to be the Patrick Mahomes before Mahomes was cool guy that he was in the early 2010s, then I think you're going to see more problems than solutions. And defenses are going to be like, oh, this dude still thinks he can do it. We know he can't. Let's start jumping some routes.
Yeah, and I think I think one of the other routes and one of the other throws you saw that from Tom Brady that same year was throwing out routes to the opposite side of the field from the opposite hash. Could not get the ball there on time. Got picked off a couple of times trying to do that. Pass defense when we're trying to do that. Just couldn't get the ball there because you have to get it there in a hurry. That is a
happens
zip
to everybody
throw.
As they get old.
Yep, absolutely. It's not like this quarterback can't do it, that quarterback can't do it. No quarterback after a certain point can do it. And it's just one of those things. So does he hit the wall there? But he's got to figure all that out, just like you said, especially in a new system. So we'll see. I mean, I think you're right. As realistic The Jets will be as successful as they are realistic in 2023. And the Jets will be as successful as Aaron Rodgers is realistic in 2023
for sure
as well.
And because of that defense, they can afford it makes it a little forgiving.
Yep.
When you've got Sauce Gardner, things can be forgiving too. Yeah.
For sure. 100%. He'll get the ball back for you. No doubt about that. All right, coming up next, the Green Bay Packers could be up to something interesting. Jordan Love is QB1 in Green Bay, but who do they put around him may have just taken a massive step forward in Jordan Love's favor. We got that and more coming up for you as we take a look at the Green Bay Packers side of this trade and continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. And today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I do therapy. I encourage people to also try out therapy if they haven't already. If you're interested in trying BetterHelp, it's a pretty solid place to give it a go. You don't have to deal with any waiting rooms, traffic, the time that it takes just to drive from somewhere to somewhere. Some of us live in places where that's not great in terms of having to give up that extra amount of time. This you can do from the comfort of your own home, from your laptop, from your phone, wherever you are comfortable. And the thing that I also like about BetterHelp is that they will personalize your therapist as well. They will help to curate a therapist that understands your background. You fill out a little questionnaire, all of that, and they'll make sure that they get you somebody that matches. And if you ever want to change, you can do so for free, which is pretty dope as well. So go ahead and check out BetterHelp today and go ahead and get unstuck today with our friends over at BetterHelp. It's betterhelp.com/lockedon. You can check it out there so you can save 10% on your first month. Once again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to learn more today. All right, everybody, we are wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL. It's Luke Braun and Ross Jackson here with you on this Tuesday episode. Don't forget to come back, you everydayers, tomorrow for Wednesday's episode with Tony and James as well. We took a look at the Jets side of this. Now let's take a look at the Packers side of this, because I think the Packers are now in position to go and do the thing that we've been waiting for them to do for years, which is load up the offensive side with some weapons, but also now have the draft capital that they need to continue to rebuild their defense as well. Moving from 15 to 13 gives them the opportunity to either let a top wide receiver fall to them or potentially make a move up. I know Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State is a big-time name for the Packers and in Packers circles, but now they also have the fodder if they wanted to do something surprising, like get back into round one and take a tight end like Michael Mayer, for instance, out of Notre Dame toward the end of round one. So I do think that we're going to learn a lot about whether or not the Packers can be the winners of this trade in a matter of just a couple days, depending upon how they go about the NFL draft.
And it's interesting. Peter at Locked On Packers, when we were doing the ultimate mock draft, which, by the way, you can search that out, go listen to it.
Please.
Was talking about.
I worked so hard.
Ross worked very hard. Was talking about a tight end as like a bigger option than you think. Everybody's like, well, who's the wide receiver that they'll take? But as maybe a bigger target to help Jordan Love, who is still very much developing. I think the biggest question for me about Jordan Love in all of this, whether you get him somebody who is a big target like a Michael Mayer, if you need a big target, even looking at Quentin Johnston, he doesn't play like a big target because he needs to put his body on everything. So he has a much smaller catch radius than you'd hope for 6'3", 208. So don't fall into that trap. If you're the Packers, I think you got to make it a tight end. And it's a historic tight end class. So go take that. Go 100%. Take, who is it? The Georgia
Kincaid
guy.
Out of Utah. Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington. Yeah. If you want to just have like an offensive lineman that can run routes.
Yeah, basically.
All of those, I think if I were Gutekunst and I were running the Packers, I would sabotage them from within, of course. But assuming I'm fair. Not doing that, I would probably focus more on a tight end to help Jordan Love, because you need that to work out if you're the Packers. If Jordan Love isn't it, and you're back here at the table this time next year going, I think we need to take a quarterback in the first round, all this extra draft capital is going to be drops in the bucket. You're just in a bad spot now, and your cap is totally torpedoed. You're going to have problems you got to get through. And it's going to kind of have to get dark before it gets better. But if Jordan Love works out, all that stuff doesn't really matter.
Right.
We can deal with it. And My question is, whenever we saw Jordan Love in with the Packers last year, he was running in a very simplified offense, which is not uncommon for your backup quarterback. You usually aren't installing an entire game plan for your backup. You have a package of plays that say, all right, if our dude twists his ankle, you got to come in. We need a drive. Here's our play package, but you're not doing a whole separate install every single week,
right?
Just in case it'll be truncated. And we only saw truncated. So my question becomes, what kind of offense do we trust Jordan Love with? What throws do we trust Jordan Love to make? And we just do not know the answer to that question. It's just a total unknown. And that's going to be the biggest question. Right now at FanDuel, which I think expected Aaron Rodgers to leave, the Packers are dead last in NFC North division odds. They're behind the Lions, who are favored. They're behind the Vikings and the Bears, who are have kind of been hovering around each other. And I mean, this is a Bears team that's not even trying to ask you to take it seriously. And the Packers are expected to be below them.
Yeah. And the Bears just lost several players for at least,
or the Lions.
Players for, the Lions. I'm sorry. Just lost like multiple players for at least 6 games. Yes. Yike of the week, by the way.
Yike of the week. They just couldn't resist that no sweat first bet. I think that's fascinating. Because if you look up and down that Packers roster, if you ask Packers, they feel great about Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, like they feel all right about their offensive situation. They've still got a few of their kind of longtime core veterans trying to, build that defense back up. Like it's not a team with as barren a cupboard as Chicago's, for example, and yet everybody kind of expects Chicago to take this much bigger leap and for the Packers to fall back a little bit. I don't know. I dislike both of those teams a lot, and I wish ill upon them. But if I had to bet on one, I probably would bet on the Packers before I bet on the Bears, and I feel like that's a hot take.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it is right now because there's so much expectation around the Bears, but their defense is still just atrocious. And I'm sorry, but the draft isn't going to fix that for you in 2023. It might help you a ton in 2024, but in 2023, I don't know. And so I think that both the Packers and the Jets have what it takes to surprise. I think for the Jets, though, the question is, do they surprise you in a good way or they surprise you in a bad way? Green Bay, they can only surprise you in a good way. Because if they're bad in 2023, they just lost their Hall of Fame
expectations on the floor.
Yeah.
They're one of the only. I haven't checked the win totals at FanDuel in a bit, but when they first came out, they were. I think the lowest the win totals went was 5.5 for like Arizona and Houston when we talked about it. Packers at 7.5. It's the third lowest total they had. That's expectations on the floor. And you know what? Sure, that's okay. They've got a new quarterback. We don't know anything about Love. Personally, I have all kinds of concerns about Love. Why wasn't he asked to do more complicated things in situations where he was the starter? Because, Aaron Rodgers was hurt going into the game and he got a whole game plan. Why wasn't he doing more?
Right.
That game against the Chiefs a couple years ago where they got shut out was not good. That's a concern. Was that just an experience, or was there something that is core to who he is that caused that? All of those are questions I don't think I can really answer without more data. But really, that is what it comes down to. But either way, for the Packers, who have been the land of Aaron Rodgers since 2008 was when he first started for them.
Yep.
This is a turning of the page that a lot of Packers fans, this is a world many Packers fans have never experienced. If you were young enough, or if you just got into football after 2008, then this is totally new. And there can be something exciting in that, considering how the last few years have gone, where it's been all of this Aaron Rodgers circus, a lot of, seasons where you thought you were a contender only to fall way short of where you thought you were going to go in the playoffs and all that stuff, and say, all right, you know what? Brave new world.
Yep. Completely agree. And I will say this about Jordan Love before we wrap up here. I got to watch Jordan Love in person at Green Bay's training camp when the Saints and Packers did their joint practice this past year. And the one thing I can say about Jordan Love for sure, even though we don't know how he necessarily fits in the NFL just yet in terms of what system he's going to be around, all these other things, what he has command of in terms of offense, all that. When he has the time, when everything is kind of like lined up, not perfectly, but when everything is there for him to take, he takes it. And he can spin that football when he throws. And I'm excited to see if Jordan Love pans out, because I liked him coming out of Utah State. I like him. I liked watching him during training camp, and getting to see him in that practice environment, which is now where all of the coaches are kind of going, well, you haven't seen it yet because we saw it in practice and blah, blah, blah. I got a little bit of a glimpse at that. And I have to agree, there's a lot there to be excited about. So I am excited to see him in 2023 lead the way for the Green Bay Packers. Yeah. But I am so much more excited to see Aaron Rodgers with the New York Giants on HBO's Hard Knocks. Can't wait.
Aaron Rodgers. Oh,
can't wait.
Aaron Rodgers versus New York media on HBO. Let's get it.
Let's get it. Going to be a ton of fun. Now, of course, the Jets have not been formally named to Hard Knocks. I know, but they can't say no. And it's clear that should be that's gotta be it, right? Like that's gotta be it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's gonna be a ton of fun. All right, y'all, we appreciate you as always for joining us for another episode of Locked On NFL. All the everydayers out here, we see you. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for continuing to support every single Monday through Friday. Again, Tony and James going to be here with you tomorrow, carrying on with all of the Aaron Rodgers talk, as well as looking ahead to the NFL draft, which is this week, Luke. And I am so excited. I am so excited the NFL draft is finally here. No more hypotheticals. Aaron Rodgers has been traded, and the NFL draft will soon be in the books. We can then live in. We can then go on into reality again. It'll be fun. So we'll wrap it up here for Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson. We will see you here again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.